Oh my god, alright, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina, I'm an astrologer, and today I'm continuing my little series, True Crime Astrology, and I'm doing episode 3, and today's person that we are talking about is GYPSY Rose Blanchard. Blanchard, I don't know. I've heard it a lot of different ways. I'm just gonna say Blanchard, and if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I apologize. So if you haven't watched the other 2 videos in this series, basically I take a figure or person from true crime. We take a look at their story alongside their birth charts. I don't know about you, but whenever I watch any sort of true crime documentary, or if I just watch anything, I'm constantly analyzing the person's chart up next to it. So I figured I would kind of do that in video format. Before I get any further into this video, let me just put in some self-advertising. Okay, so if you would like to get your own psychology debrief by me, you can order a birth chart reading from my website, shainaemilyastrology.com. I also have an astrology TikTok, and I have a personal Instagram. My personal Instagram, I should warn you, is pretty much just photos of my 3 dogs, and that's probably how it's gonna stay. So if you give a shit at all, yes, I did move. Yes, I am still working out the background, but I have a house now. I live in a house. That's great. I will also just say this is gonna be a really long video. My videos are always long, and I cut out so much of them still. You wouldn't think I do, but I do. And I'm like, am I redundant? Do you like that they're long? Or are you like, no, I'd rather just have you give me less information and make it shorter? So let me know. I'm a 7th houser. This is me being a 7th house person. Okay. Firstly, I will say, not to spoil anything, but the reason why I'm doing this right now and why I wanted to talk about GYPSY Rose Blanchard is because she's actually still alive, and she is getting out of prison on December 28th of 2023. Hopefully I'm posting that right around this time. She's either getting out of prison or she just got out. So I just wanted to kind of revisit her story and take a look at it. So let's talk about the 3 main characters of this story, okay? And so we are dealing with 3 different birth charts. First thing I will say is that I only have one person's birth time, and I did double confirm them this time, okay? I need to be extra careful. I have a big responsibility here. So as much as I could get into, this is GYPSY Rose's accurate, completely information AA rating, okay? Her birthday is Saturday, July 27th, 1991 at 11:12 a.m. in Raceland, Louisiana. And now her mother is Dee Blanchard. We do not know her birth time at all. I'm not going to speculate it. We're just going to stick with the planetary positions and the, main aspects between them. And she was born on Wednesday, May 3rd, 1967 in Chackbay, Louisiana. And then our last character is Nicholas Godejohn. We'll get to him later. His birthday is Saturday, May 20th, 1989, and he is from Big Bend, Wisconsin. But the first thing I want to point out is that GYPSY Rose is a full moon baby. She was born on the Aquarius full moon, and I think that that does play a big part in this situation. I think that is a major component, and I think this is a great example of the hypocrisy that an opposition can really create in somebody's life, and how astounding it can be that 2 things that are completely opposite and the information presented should cancel each other out and both shouldn't be true, but I think they are. So that's something really interesting to keep in mind. So a quick summary. What is the GYPSY Rose Blanchard case? What are we talking about today? So if you don't know, this is basically the most kind of well-known and most obvious sort of case of Munchausen by proxy, which is also called like fictitious illness placed on upon another or something. Basically, GYPSY Rose was the victim of Munchausen by proxy, and her mother, Dee Blanchard, was the one who had it. Basically, Munchausen by proxy, if you want to know more about it, definitely look more into the illness itself. But basically, it's when somebody who is taking care of someone, usually like a child, is looking for attention, pity, some sort of emotional satisfaction. And the way that they find it is through feigning illnesses or faking illnesses or, creating illnesses in their child that they are in care of. And again, that might sound very, very odd, like that doesn't even make any sense, but not to spoil the situation, but I definitely think it makes a lot of sense that Dee Blanchard has a Pisces moon. She also has her Chiron in Pisces, and this isn't me trying to badmouth every Pisces moon, but no matter what I think within the Pisces moon, there is some sort of need to be martyred to as well as they need to martyr to somebody else. Like, let's say if you have a parent with a Pisces moon, you might not have the situation as extreme as GYPSY, as Munchausen by proxy, but there might have been a little situation where you thought, yeah, my parent with the Pisces moon did mention a lot how they gave up a lot for me, and use that over my head a little bit, and I feel as though I need to do the same a lot for them. You know, the Pisces moon child might feel a lot like they are living mostly for their parent, or that's what their parent expects of them. And I definitely think in a weird way that's the situation that GYPSY Rose was in. Again, and also the caretaker, you know, manipulates the doctors, manipulates everybody around them, and they even manipulate the child, the public, everybody, that this child that they're in the care of really has these illnesses. Pisces moon are definitely known for, you don't really know where the line of reality is with them sometimes. It's really hard to tell. They can create fictitious situations and really believe them, or make themselves believe them, and it can be really hard to know where reality is with the Pisces moon. And sometimes when you meet a Pisces moon, they can be the nicest, most kindest people you've ever met, and they will a lot of times always keep that face on them for the most part, but there can be this elusive, manipulative undertone that you don't even know if they're aware of or not. Now, I definitely think that Dee Dee Blanchard was definitely aware of. You do have to look about the fact that she has this moon opposite Pluto, which adds an extra real evil emphasis edge to this Pisces moon that was not properly nurtured and displayed in her life, you know? Well, it was very much displayed in her life, but not, you know, in the more positive way, in the much more negative way. But I think it makes a lot of sense that a big note that I will make is that the Pisces moon has a Libra rising child, which is GYPSY. This is also very Saturn in the 4th house that she has in her chart as well. Dee Dee knew what she wanted out of her child, and that was for her child to be a Libra rising, which was for her to go along with the situation. Because you may think, as the child with Munchausen by proxy, wouldn't you be like, I'm not sick, I'm not this, I'm not that? But a Libra rising can sometimes be desperate to make their partner, or, you know, which can even be their mother or parent or their other, you know, the other in their life, their main other, happy. They can go to very extreme cases to make them happy, and I'll go more into that later on, but that's just a little brief thing of, I think, the two biggest things that come into play personally with this Munchausen by proxy situation. You know, if Virgo rules all our physical diseases, you know, Pisces rules all our spiritual or mental and even fictitious made-up diseases, which, so it makes a lot of sense that Dee Dee has this Pisces moon. I've been reading this book recently, and it's called Planetary Cycles by Betty, I think how you say it is Lundstedt, the last name, and I really like the book, and this quote that she said stood out to me, and I think it really made a lot of sense with GYPSY's situation, and it says, a person who has no one to talk about personal troubles may be forced over the edge with disillusionment, and I think that that is exactly what happened in GYPSY's case, and just keep that in mind. So let's go into the story. We start with Claudine Petrie. And if you don't know, that's actually Dee Dee Blanchard. She did change her name. She was originally called Claudine Petrie. Claudine was born in Louisiana, and she was actually the youngest of 5 children. This is super in line with the Pisces moon. She was definitely the baby of the family and treated remarkably as such. Also makes a lot of sense that she's a Taurus as well, just because sometimes Tauruses can really be nurtured and be very taken care of and coddled, which can be a positive thing, but sometimes obviously if you get too much of it, you know, it goes down the negative route. And also, you know, Pisces moons, I always say, are typically the favorite child. And sometimes there's no real reason why. Basically, if you listen to what her siblings say about her growing up, is that she was the favorite. She was definitely the one that got everything from her mom. You know, all this stuff is in line with Pisces moon. However, there was definitely that similar undertone of her mother having some sort of Munchausen by proxy as well. Everything is cycles. Dee Dee does have a moon opposite Pluto, which I think shows that this was not just something that she had out of nowhere, that this was something that she has inherited. And we don't even know anything about Dee Dee's mother's mother, right? And she could have just been the same thing. This could have probably been a long lineage of this. Because I will say really quickly, if you look at Dee Dee's chart, she has moon opposite Pluto. And what did she give her child? Moon square Pluto. GYPSY has moon square Pluto. So her siblings said that, you know, when she got the car when she wanted the car when they grew up, that she was baby, that she was said, you know, from a young age that Dee Dee, well, Claudine, I'll refer to her as Dee Dee always, but just remember her name is Claudine, just to make it easy, that Dee Dee had heart murmurs and that she had all these issues and that she couldn't even jump up and down and get too excited. She couldn't do household chores. That's what her mother would say. Her mother wouldn't really let her do anything. Her mother wanted Dee Dee to remain her little girl. She Pisces mooned her to like the nth degree. I mean, even Venus and Gemini is a very like childlike energy. And she obviously wanted to keep her as the baby for some reason. You know, all the other kids had much higher expectations, but not Dee Dee. Dee Dee pretty much got everything she wanted. She got the clothes, she got the glamour, she loved the attention of it all. She didn't really have to do much, but I guess the exchange was that she kind of had to be completely coddled and had to do exactly what her mom said and stay with her mom and didn't get to go out and play with the other kids. Maybe part of her liked it, maybe part of her didn't. You know, we'll never really know, but we do know that she has this moon opposite Pluto, and it probably wasn't much of her choice. She also has Venus square Pluto in her chart, so she was shown this kind of obsessive favoritism sort of love from a very young age. Venus square Pluto is a very potent aspect. I definitely want to do a whole video about it sometime soon if you want to see that, and if I have posted it by now, then you can check the aspect playlist for it that I have on my channel. Now, we haven't touched much on Dee Dee's Taurus energy. Again, this is some negative Taurus energy, okay, right? That's what we know about these true crime videos. These are going to be kind of a lot of these energies at their worst, right? Not much about their best is being shown through these, so keep that in mind, right? This is a little bit of a negative magnifying glass on the signs, right? So this Taurus energy, they said that she had a habit from a young age of stealing from her family, stealing a bunch of money, stealing things, whatever it might be, shoplifting. She wrote a bunch of bad checks, you know, when she got older, she was known for shoplifting. She would shoplift with her mom even, which can, again, be this negative Taurus energy. And she does have this tight Saturn-Lilith conjunction in Aries. So she has this sort of authority to her where she goes, an entitlement, where she goes, I want this, I deserve this. And her Saturn and her Lilith are unaspected, so you know, she got away with it for a really, really, really long time, right? That was a big part of why she changed her name as well, was because the law was kind of after her when she got older because of these things. And all of this has to do, she's stealing very Taurus things. She's stealing comforts, right? Not necessities. She's stealing because she wants to, she enjoys it, and she wants these things. She wants the finer things in life to a certain extent, even though she doesn't look like it. She's a Pisces moon, right? I mean, this combo is kind of sloppy. It's kind of messy. It's kind of not the cleanest, you know? Dee Dee actually did work at it as a nurse's aide when she was younger, and she has some nursing background. She went to college for a few years for nursing. She didn't finish it out in very, you know, Taurus Pisces moon style. And again, very Pisces moon. She had a lot of caretaking in her background. She wasn't really that spectacular at anything. She wasn't really known for anything. She didn't really, you know, light up a room like we say about a lot of people in true crime. She was just kind of average, and she hated that. But the one thing she could do was be a caretaker. See it coming together now, right? When Dee Dee was 24, she met somebody named Rod Blanchard. And Rod Blanchard was 17. Well, I guess a few months later, she wound up getting pregnant, and they wound up marrying. And that is how they had Gypsy. A little bit of entrapment, if you ask me. A very Venus square Pluto, if you ask me. Venus square Uranus as well in Dee Dee's chart, you know, very sudden, out of nowhere. Didn't really seem to have anybody before then, and then all of a sudden, she met this young guy, got pregnant, you know. And there's no information about Rod Blanchard's birthday, and I kind of do have more sympathy for him than most people in this situation. And I couldn't find his information, and I didn't really want to look that far. I was like, if he wants to be off the internet, I think that kind of makes sense. So speaking of Dee Dee having Venus square Uranus, which are sudden stops and endings and halts to love, you know, lots of downtime, nothing, and then suddenly, oh, all this electricity, all this stuff's happening. You know, I met this young guy, he's sweeping me off my feet, he loves me, we're pregnant, he proposed to me. But then shortly before Gypsy Rose's birth in 1991, actually the couple separated. Rod decided that he couldn't do this. He didn't love Dee Dee. He didn't hate Dee Dee at all. He just didn't feel as though he loved her in the way that she deserved to be loved, but he promised to always support Gypsy, promised to always be there, just didn't want to be with Dee Dee, but would be a parent with Dee Dee. And obviously, as somebody with Dee Dee, with all this, you know, Pluto energy, moon opposite Pluto, Venus square Pluto, that's not going to land very well with her, right? I think this definitely had a big impact on the situation, and why, you know, later on in the future, she did keep Gypsy away from Rod for so long. I know that I've known people with this similar Pluto energy, even with the same Venus, to get betrayed one time in high school and like get stood up and then just hang on to that for the rest of their life and like never get past that person, and blame that as their like downfall. So that definitely could have been a very triggering moment for Dee Dee. I think it skimmed over a little bit, because you're like, oh, well, it wasn't like this really negative thing, but it's going to be a betrayal for her no matter what. So this definitely, I think, sparked something in her, to have to go through that. And I don't think she had the emotional capacity to go through that, because she never had to go through anything. She was protected and she was coddled in so many ways her entire life. She was literally even protected from jumping, you know, like the act of physical jumping. Very Taurus Pisces anyways. That's basically a background on Dee Dee. So in the beginning of Gypsy's life, Rod very much remained in it. So if you look at Gypsy's sun, she has it in the Leo in the 10th house. So there was definitely a piece of the dad that was definitely there, definitely prominent. You know, even sextile, her ascendant, they probably could have really gotten along to a certain extent. There was never any, you know, drama about them fighting or anything like that. However, it is conjunct Chiron and it is opposite Saturn, and she is a full moon baby, it's opposite her moon. So first off, sun opposite moon. Her parents split before she was born. This is very obvious. Almost every full moon baby will have split parents. Even if they're not split, there was a split household, you know, like it really felt like they should have gotten divorced or gotten separated, but most of the time they do, or they weren't even married in the first place. Can very much be something. So automatically there's a split in the family, and this will reflect a split in the child, and it shows up here. She's sun opposite Saturn, so there's definitely inconsistencies there. You know, her mother was the one that was there consistently always, you know, overbearing, you know, moon opposite Jupiter, moon square Pluto, all that sort of stuff, but moon trine ascendant. They did get along. They did love each other very much for a very long time, but that sun opposite Saturn and that sun conjunct Chiron just shows some inconsistency in the fatherly figure, to show that maybe the father wasn't as responsible or as on top of things as maybe he should have been, and also shows that there was some lack of discipline, which was shown in Dee Dee's life, that she didn't really have to go to school, learn things, all that sort of stuff, and that's true in Gypsy's life. Gypsy was taken out of school in 2nd grade. There's a lack of discipline that she had to learn with that sun opposite Saturn, but she still had to learn discipline, just in a very different way, which her Saturn is in her 4th house. It was discipline through her mother, right? Not through the outside world, which was that sun in the 10th house. So even though she seemed like a very normal, happy baby, always smiling, all that sort of stuff, at around 3 months old, Dee Dee started claiming that Gypsy had sleep apnea, and that Gypsy needed a breathing machine to sleep with, and she began taking her to the hospital all the time. This is already at 3 months old. The first thing that I would like to point to is something that is glaringly obvious, that if you're an astrologer or you're into astrology at all, the first thing that you're going to look for in Gypsy's chart is some kind of Virgo Pisces axis. And if you will look at her chart, she does have Virgo energy. She doesn't have anything in the 6th house and nothing in the 12th house. But also if you look again at her Virgo energy, it's all healthy. So this is some of the most glaringly, like, I guess, red flag to me, that she's healthy, that she wasn't sick. She has nothing in the 6th house. She has a healthy 6th house. It's in Pisces. That's not healthy inherently, but there's no planets in there that would indicate some sort of illness, actual illness. And her 12th house is empty as well. It's in Virgo again, which isn't the best, but it makes sense with her mother's influence, but there's nothing in there actually indicating mental health issues or troubles or isolation or needing to be in this situation, right? No Pisces energy at all. Now there is Virgo energy, but it's not in any sort of health house. It's in the 11th house. This is a very public house. This is all about, you know, humanitarianism, doing good for the world and charity and being kind of an influencer, all that sort of stuff. And it's healthy. There's nothing wrong with this Virgo energy. It's good. You know, Virgo energy indicates that she's going to the doctors all the time, but there's nothing wrong with her. But there are issues in her chart. There are a lot of hard things in her chart, but it's not health, right? Now it was forced to be health, but we'll talk about that. So despite finding no issues over and over, Dee Dee was convinced. Again, Pisces moon can really manifest things, right? And Tauruses are really stubborn. So if they have a will they want to manifest, then they're going to go through anybody to manifest it, honestly. And so basically Dee Dee claimed that Gypsy had an unspecified chromosomal disorder, which I think is really interesting with her Aquarius moon. She was put on a breathing machine, and Dee Dee told everybody that Gypsy wouldn't live past 18 years old, which I think is crazy to tell that to people and have to have people reconcile with her death from a young age. I think that's a very Pisces moon manipulative thing, because Pisces does deal with the in-between of like life and death, and to like manipulate everybody to say that she's gonna die at a certain time. She probably liked getting that pity. I think she like got off on that pity in a lot of ways and enjoyed seeing somebody being sad. I think she wanted people to be sad for her as well, but didn't want to put herself in a negative position because she had too much of an ego, too much of pride for that. And so she put her daughter in that position, and her daughter being a Libra rising just did that. She felt like she had to be a mediator, I think, more than anything, between her mom and the outer world. I feel like Gypsy felt like she was put in that position, and I think that Gypsy did like the attention to a certain extent of it with that Leo sun in the 10th house. Now, you'll see in videos when she's younger, when Gypsy's younger, of her like smiling in every single video. She seems happy, she seems really healthy. There's even this video of her at 4 or 5 doing like a pageant and being fine, really. And it's interesting because around when Gypsy was 5 was when things really started to get bad. Like her health really deteriorated. Gypsy got a feeding tube. Interesting that the first thing that she went to was feeding. That's what Dee Dee's mom went to. She's a Taurus. She found control through the feeding tube because you could put whatever you wanted in the feeding tube. What was also interesting is that when this started getting really bad was also around when Dee Dee's mother passed. And it's pretty known that Dee Dee starved her mother and watched her starve and denied her food and kind of killed her around this time, which is interesting. And this is also around the time when things got really bad sickness-wise with Gypsy. And remember that this whole time, Rod is sending a bunch of money to Dee Dee, like a ton of money to support all these hospital bills and all this stuff, and is believing her. Again, like very negative Taurus energy, all dealing with money and finances and all that sort of stuff. There was even a time where Gypsy and Dee Dee moved in with Rod and Gypsy's stepmom, and Dee Dee would cook for Gypsy's stepmother, and they speculated that Dee Dee was putting Roundup, like weed killer or like different poisons, into Gypsy's stepmother's food because the stepmother was getting really sick, and when they left she magically got better and she was eating the food that Dee Dee gave her. And so there's a lot of stuff with food going on. She finds a lot of ways to hurt people through food, through what they eat, which is a very Taurus approach. Her sun is trine Pluto, so you might think, oh, that's a good aspect, but again, just remember that sometimes positive aspects can enforce evil. There's really nothing stopping her. She's really getting what she wants through this control. And again, it's Pluto in Virgo, and that's all about doing things for the other person. That's all about serving the other person. So she absolutely loved having complete control over the other person and having that person martyr them to her, and then her also serving them. She really liked being indebted to that person as well, or at least like the mystical feeling that she was indebted to that person. And you're wondering, yes, there was confrontation between the stepmother and Rod with Dee Dee about the health thing and all that stuff. They would constantly confront her, and that is why Dee Dee eventually wound up moving. And Dee Dee eventually took Gypsy farther and farther and farther away from the father, restricting the calls more and more and more, restricting the visits more and more and more, knowing less and less about things. And so that does again have a lot to do with that Moon Pluto oppositions, as well as that Sun opposite Saturn in Gypsy's chart and Sun conjunct Chiron in Gypsy's chart. Dee Dee would also lie and say that the father was an alcoholic, would never pay child support, he was horrible, he hated them, right? I think all of this stems from the fact that he rejected her and she has no tools at all to be able to deal with that. By this time that Gypsy was like maybe 5 to 10, right? This was the height of like, she had illnesses. She all of a sudden couldn't walk. She was in a wheelchair. I'll just read out the list. Dee Dee claimed GYPSY had asthma, epilepsy. She was hearing impaired, vision impaired. She had a heart murmur. She had leukemia. She had cancer. That's why her head was shaved. She had anemia. She had incontinence. Like, and she was on all this anti-seizure medication. That was what made her teeth fall out, and that's why she had no teeth. GYPSY claims that she thought all of this was true, except she knew she couldn't walk. That was the only thing that she claimed that she knew wasn't true, which it makes you wonder, you know, if she knew this, then how much of the rest did she know? And so you're like, okay, let's take a look at, is she a liar, right? And if you look at her chart, I mean, she's a Libra rising, so immediately there's some sort of level of, I will tell people what they want to hear. She might not be a liar, but she might be like, this is what I need to say to protect this person, to make everybody happy, to not cause any upset. So it's not going to be lying immediately, and I don't think her aspects to her rising indicate that of a liar. I think she's a very authentic person to a certain extent. She will definitely do things and say things to make the other side happier for her, and it could be hard to tell probably what she really thinks and what she really feels. Her Mercury is in Virgo in the 11th house, and I don't think this is innately a lying position. It's conjuncture Venus and her Mars, and it's sextile her midheaven. None of this really makes me feel like she's a liar, but it does make me feel like she's going to be very strategic with what she says. She's going to make sure that what she says is thought through and cautious, and that people are going to be okay with what she says and how she says it. And I don't think she's going to want to say anything to really shake things up too much or be too bold. If she's bold, it's like sweet, it's funny, it's cute, it's smart. I think that she's smart and she's strategic, but it's not like with Dee Dee. When you look at Dee Dee's chart and you see this Mercury square Jupiter, that just immediately to me is like she's a liar. And it's sextile this Pisces moon, which we don't trust her Pisces moon already with the placement that it's in and how it talks to things, that this Mercury just adding to this does not, you know, it makes her a really shaky character, and I don't even know her rising sign. You know, GYPSY has nothing in her 3rd house, her 6th house, her 12th house, or her 8th house, which would indicate that she's a huge liar and that she's really capable of pulling one over on a bunch of people. But I do definitely think she will hide or protect the truth to make everybody in what her mind thinks happy with her. Now, she does have this Pluto in the 2nd house, which is square Jupiter, square her moon, and I think this makes a lot of sense because, again, she had all these fake illnesses, and her mother, who's a Taurus, got a bunch of money because of this. She got extra child support money from just, in general, the government. She got a bunch of, you know, charitable donations from big charities because of her daughter's illness, and this definitely put GYPSY's Pluto in her 2nd house because Pluto in the 2nd house has a lot to do with kind of shady ways and manipulative ways that you get your money from less than truthful ways. You know, it was square her moon, that she was getting this money for these illnesses and these problems that she didn't actually have. What she actually was more of a figurehead for sick people, right? She sang the national anthem. Her and her mother looked like, with this moon trine ascendant, this perfect mother-daughter combo. Dee Dee was so manipulated, she made her daughter look sick, right? She dressed her up in these things, she put stuffed animals. All this stuff has so much to do with GYPSY being much more of this 11th house Leo Aquarius figurehead of sick people with this Virgo energy, but she has nothing in her chart that indicates that she's sick herself. So I think that GYPSY really liked the idea that she was doing something for humanity in her mind, really liked that she felt like she was doing good, doing better. That's very 11th house, right? But the way that it was being done was very shady. It's square Pluto opposite her moon. It's not truthful, right? It's this back and forth that she goes through. Oh, I love the attention. I have this moon in Aquarius in the 5th house. I really want to feel like I'm doing something here, right? Oh, it's opposite my sun in Leo in the 10th house. I don't want to act like I like the attention, but I really do. I like that my mom has the camera on me all the time, even though these are lies and these aren't these truthful things. And then it's square this Pluto where it's like, this is her livelihood. This is her lifestyle. This is all that she knows. And there's this video clip where when she's asked what she thinks of her mom and how she and if she used one word to describe her mom, she would say unconventional. And that, I feel like, is so showing of her Aquarius moon, that that's how she views her mom, unconventional. She viewed her life and her lifestyle as unconventional. It might have just been like, this is how I knew how to live and how to get what I needed, which was money and support and help. with being a person, right? They're also Hurricane Katrina victims, which I wonder, I mean, how much of that is even true? Yeah, maybe they were in, the area, but how much of their stuff was really lost from Katrina? They got a house from Habitat for Humanity because of this. And I know it might be awful, like, oh, how dare you question a Katrina survivor? And it's like, well, don't you think that's the same thing with everything else? Like, how dare you question somebody in a wheelchair? How dare you question somebody with cancer? How dare you question somebody that's slow, mentally slow? Because Dee Dee claimed that GYPSY was mentally slow and below her age. How do you question that, right? Like, why do we accept that she's a Hurricane Katrina survivor and that their house was destroyed? Like, why do we even accept that? So people wonder, like, oh, how did this get through the cracks? But I think that's your answer. GYPSY spent most of her childhood in and out of doctor's offices and just going through all of this horrible stuff, all these horrible surgeries at the hand of her mother. A huge, huge thing that is very real in her chart, because you may be like, well, she went through all this abuse and all this stuff, and like, she did go through surgeries. She definitely did deal with, she did have to lose her teeth. Like, there are certain things that were true because of the fake illnesses that Dee Dee put her through and all the medications and stuff. And you're like, well, wouldn't that show up on her chart? And yes, it does. Thank you for asking. GYPSY has a really insane 4th house, all right? We have it in Capricorn with Uranus, Lilith, Neptune, North Node, Juno, and Saturn. Not really any positive planets, not really any easy planets. And this is her house of home, house of her mother, house of her reality, day in and day out. And yeah, we see clips of her, jumping from the snow and being like, oh, and then getting all these things, going to Walt Disney World, all these things. You're like, this is amazing, this is amazing. Yes, that's 11th house stuff that she's getting to do. But her reality of her day-to-day was horrible. It was her 4th house, right? Her mom was insane. 4th house Uranus. Her life was constantly changing, constantly being uprooted, moving all these places just because her mom was trying to get away from her dad or, get a new place or whatever it was. And also Uranus in the 4th house indicates like mental health things. Like, there's indications that she shows some sociopathic behaviors because of her mother being her only role model in her life and her mother being the character that she was. And she has this Aquarius moon and Uranus in the 4th house, which can deal with feeling crazy, feeling insane, feeling like she's around a very mentally unstable environment. Her Uranus makes a lot of strong contacts and it's very close to her 4th house cusp. And so there's just a lot of mental instability and a lot of questions and a lot of very unsure things. So I think a big thing with her with this Uranus so close to her 4th house and with it how it is it's like, well, what's the truth? And it's like, there's no knowing, it's Uranus. And to add to that, there's Neptune in the 4th house conjunct her Lilith, and a tight conjunction with her Lilith. In fact, her Neptune conjunct Lilith is actually her tightest aspect in her chart. It's under a degree close to each other, so it's a major theme in her life. And I think that Neptune conjunct Lilith in the 4th house, like having to completely martyr herself and surrender herself to her mother and go through all these unnecessary treatments. She saw the worst side of Neptune. She was so taken care of, which is Neptune in the 4th house, but she was overly taken care of, manipulated, overly nurtured. Like, you wonder why her mom didn't allow her to walk in public even though she could. And I think it's just another form of control. If she was to move outside in the outside environment, GYPSY, her mother had to physically move her, which is the most insane sort of Neptunian control. Also, obviously, we can point all of this stuff back to Moon Square Pluto. I just don't want to keep saying it. Neptune in the 4th house, there was a lot of lies, a lot of questionable stuff going on with her family, a lot of questionable stuff going on with her heritage and her mother and everything having to do with Neptune. And whether she was really sick or not, right? No, she wasn't. She's okay based on her aspects, but it's opposite her midheaven. We would never know that. And also she deals with a lot of disillusionment in herself, which is why I quoted planetary cycles in the beginning. And she loved Disney. That was a big thing. She loved the fairy tale aspect of things. She's ultimate millennial in that way, which I think makes sense because she has all the millennial generational planets in her 4th house. So she really is the ultimate millennial. She's kind of like the exaggerated millennial. Maybe there's a lot of millennials that would feel like their parents did this, but maybe not to as extreme of an amount or just in a different way. But those feelings of martyrdom back and forth could really be there for a lot of the millennial generation. And a lot of them probably found an escape through fantasy, especially being Disney kids. Also, Disney was the only thing that she was allowed to watch really because of what tight of a hold her mother had over it. I mean, she's a 5th house moon, she's a Leo sun. You know, no offense, but Leo suns, well, actually lots of offense. Leo suns have really bad taste. I think Disney's stupid, but I understand why she would connect it. I don't fault her for that. I mean, how are you supposed to, you know, get good taste when you're completely sheltered from literally everything? But other Leos out there that aren't sheltered, what are you doing? Why do you have bad taste? I mean, I guess if you're watching this, you must have great taste because you like me. So she escaped a lot through fantasy, and she definitely saw herself as this fairy tale, as this, like, you know, you think about all the Disney fairy tale stories, and it's like, they're trapped, they're locked up away, all the princesses, and they're forced to do all these things, and they're victims, and then the Prince Charming saves them, and, you know, gets rid of the evil stepsisters, or throws the mother out the window of you know, the long tower that Rapunzel lived in, or whatever it is, and then they lived happily ever after, and everybody understood the situation because she was a princess. She didn't go to prison, she didn't get any faults, or like, it was the right thing to do, right? We all agree it was the right thing to do in the fairy tales, that's what we're taught, so it's like, of course she was disillusioned. Of course she didn't understand what she was doing because she was literally living a real life fairy tale in a lot of ways, and it was really a fairy tale nightmare, sure, but that's how a lot of them are, right? GYPSY was also given so many awards for 11th house acclaim, but it's this negative Leo energy with Chiron in there, so it wasn't for the truth of the situation, but she still probably really enjoyed getting these awards, honestly. She probably felt really special in a lot of ways, and she really did feel special with all this Aquarius Leo energy. So that stuff probably made sense to her. She felt like she should get awards. She felt like she does have such a bright, cheery personality. She was so inspiring because she was smiling through all the pain, but she wasn't in pain, but she also was in pain. Very Neptune conjunct Lilith in the 4th house, you know? Dee Dee was able to manipulate all the medical professionals. Dee Dee had many forged records, and she used the whole Hurricane Katrina thing as almost like a crutch because she was always able to go, oh, well, what happened with this, and this? Oh, I lost it in Katrina. I lost everything in Katrina. So at this point, she even had forged birth certificates, okay? Dee Dee could not accept middle age, right? She could not accept her child growing up. Also, again, Pisces moon, who will rely on me, what will be my point if I don't have somebody that relies on me and that needs me. And so Dee Dee wound up lying about GYPSY's age and, you know, said she was 15, but she was really like 21, 22, all that. It also forced GYPSY to be kept in a juvenile role. I think this has a lot to do with GYPSY's midheaven in Cancer, obviously. I mean, she was forced to be this younger kid. She's forced to come across younger than she was. She was forced to hold up this illusion with this opposite to Neptune. Her mother was always seen with her. You know, Libra rising, they were a duo. She kind of was able to play naive and innocent in a lot of ways. And that's another question that people have. How much was she in on this with all this Capricorn energy? She has Saturn in the 4th house. There has to be some level of wits about her. How much was she actually knowledgeable about this situation? That's a big question. And with Neptune opposite her midheaven and Uranus opposite her midheaven, the only answer is like, both are true. And that's all we know. So fast forward a little. GYPSY's getting a little bit older. GYPSY has always been a fan of sci-fi conventions. That makes sense, all that 11th house Virgo Leo stuff. She would go and dress up, she would see movies, she would dress up as the characters. All this makes a lot of sense with the fun side of her personality and her chart. She would also go online a lot. She was a part of a lot of chat rooms. Again, this is all very 11th house, all very Aquarius moon. That was the only kind of retreat she could get from her mom, right? She wound up meeting somebody who was like 36 and she was supposed to be 15, even though, like I said, she was like in her early 20s at that time. And this was when things started to get really bad. Obviously, she was like 21, 22. I guess still super delusional, didn't know what was really going on, or did she? She started to suspect she was a different age because she did admit to finding some sort of old thing that said that she was born in 1991. So this boy that she met said, you should run away with me at the sci-fi convention. And she was like, I'm a Libra rising, you know? Okay, my Venus is in Virgo trine Neptune. Like, absolutely, yeah, I'll run away with you, my Prince Charming. And she did. Well, she wound up getting caught really quickly because of a friend, again, very 11th house. And what Dee Dee wound up doing was handcuffing her to her bed for 2 weeks and only allowing her to be unhandcuffed when she went to the bathroom, having complete control over her, all that sort of stuff. Took the internet away from her, all these things. Well, that didn't stop her. She wound up getting herself a phone and connected it to the Wi-Fi and was on all these different weird corners of the internet. Again, 11th house. All super 11th house. People, I feel like, will focus with her on all these illnesses that she had and all this fake stuff. And yeah, that's why she has this 4th house stellium. But so much of her story is 11th house. It's online. I mean, why is it the one that I'm talking about? It's the popular one. We know of her. 10th house sun. We'll see which community she finds and attaches to online now. Who knows? Anyway. Can I just touch on her Virgo energy really quick and how she had to serve, right? Virgo's motto is to serve. So she probably felt like she was serving a greater ideal. Also, she had to serve her mother. And also that Mars and Virgo having to be like handcuffed to the bed and just being forced to be in complete submission. She definitely mentions that she, you know, I will say one of the things that she was on was a Christian dating site. Right? And she definitely believed that the woman should be submissive to the man. But I think she definitely more believed that she should be submissive to everyone. Or she was told that and put in that position, right? So she met somebody on this Christian dating site. She was supposed to be, I think, 17 at the time. She was really in her early 20s, but she met this 24-year-old, right? I know, named Nicholas Godejohn. He was from Big Bend, Wisconsin. It's so funny they met on a Christian dating site. Very Christian of them. Godejohn, he has a criminal record to him, okay? He was arrested for indecent exposure, which you may think like, okay. But what is that indecent exposure? He was like masturbating, I think it was on a subway or somewhere in public for 8 hours. For 8 hours, which it's like, what's stamina? And also, why did it take 8 hours for anybody to say anything? What was going on? Anyways, he also has a history of mental illness, maybe dissociative identity disorder. He is for sure diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He is said to have a lower IQ, and he is said to be like mentally developed to a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, even though he's in his 20s. He also says that he has multiple personalities. So let's take a look at this, okay? What do we know about his chart really quickly, right? First thing I want to point out is that he is a Taurus sun. And he is a Scorpio moon, and it's in opposition. Now, we don't know his birth time, so maybe he's a Sagittarius moon, but I believe he's a Scorpio moon. That's what I think. I'll eat crow or whatever if I'm wrong. I don't care. No matter what, he's a full moon baby, okay? And it's Taurus Scorpio, which is fixed energy. And what is Gypsy but Leo Aquarius fixed moon energy? And I always say that those 4 signs love each other. They love to hate each other. It's their favorite thing, and they hate to love each other, but they do. They're always seen together, and they're always seen in divorces. It's seen in marriages too, but it's seen in unhappy marriages. Like, I don't know what it is about people with a bunch of fixed energy, but they will always pick somebody else with a bunch of fixed energy that doesn't match up with them. And it's infuriating because it makes their lives miserable, but they'll do it anyways because they're both so stubborn. Nobody's happy, and they're okay with it because all that matters is that they're stubborn. Anyway, so what I will also say is that the obvious thing to point out is that also that Nicholas is a Taurus sun, Venus in Gemini, and that also Gypsy's mom is a Taurus sun, Venus in Gemini. So there's definitely, you know, repeated patterns there. They're both water moons. They're both known for being the manipulative, you know, conniving water moons. So definitely she's showing a type here, okay? Nicholas's chart is hard, okay? The only positive aspects he has is with his Pluto and his Lilith, which that's not the 2 things that you want reinforced positively in a chart of somebody who has really hard energies, who has multiple yods, who already is dealing with a moon that is not easy to handle, has all these really harsh millennial Capricorn energies, does not have a healthy Mars. It's just there's nothing really simple about his chart. It makes sense that he has a lot of mental health disorders, considering the fact that he has all this Gemini energy, so he would have elusive mental health disorders. I see that with a lot of Gemini. With Virgo Pisces, there tends to be a lot more diagnosis. So basically, when they started talking, they instantly did the whole fixed, you know, full moon, delusional Venus thing. Venus and Geminis move fast. If you look at Nicholas's chart, he's got this Venus and Gemini conjunct Jupiter, so it moves even faster. He's got this Sagittarius thing, which will just go into things, say, I love you. His Venus is trine his Lilith. Of course, he's going to want a relationship with a darker, more interesting, intriguing edge. And he's got a bunch of in conjunction. So all this Pluto and all this Capricorn stuff, I think in conjunct his Venus shows that that side of him is really committed, but then that Venus and Gemini side of him is really fast and uncommitted. So it's just really scary back and forth. And to me, I think he perfectly represents the Christian man, the modern millennial Christian man. Just like insane and like so quick to love and uses Christianity as like, let's get married and so I can fuck you, and then is crazy. It just has all these like past convictions and all these past marriages or even stuff and just wants to be forgiven time and time again. Anyways, let's move on. That's not the main point. let's go back to them chatting, all right? Oh, it's love at first sight. We both have all these issues with Venus and Neptune. I mean, that's what all three of them share, is Venus-Neptune problems, which makes a lot of sense because they all are very sacrificial in their love, and sacrificial in a way that nobody really asked them to be, but also everybody forced them to be as well. Or at least they felt obligated to be. Basically, they feel like they have a lot in common. They want to get married, they want to elope, and they want to meet up. So they conspire this plan to be able to meet up in this movie theater. It's really weird. I'll shave you the story. Dee Dee says she's weirded out by this man that they meet in the movie theater because he's 24 years old. He has no kid. He's in the live action Cinderella, you know, a kid's movie. And it's like, interesting, Dee Dee, because you're at a movie theater seeing the live action Cinderella with no kid because your child is actually like 22, even though you claim that she's 14. Even though she's 14, that's still a little old. Anyways, there was a feud. They were never going to accept each other, right? And also, actually, GYPSY says that they lost their virginity that day that they met in the movie theater because, again, everything was online, very 11th house. And, you know, very Mars and Virgo in the 11th house just went right to it. Mars trine Uranus was, like, totally chastity, you know, for so long. And then all of a sudden, you know, had sex. Now, there is a lot of stuff that says online that they had a lot of, like, BDSM undertones to their messages, right? This makes sense that he has this Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini energy. If you look at his chart, okay, I see why. That's something that Nicholas Godejohn would want to do. Very incel energy, this guy, right? So everybody gives me shit that I say Mars and Virgos are prudes. Come on, GYPSY Rose is like 24. She was forced to be a prude. I'm not judging her for it. She has an overbearing mom. She's really awkward. She's definitely not somebody that you would see on the street and think like, oh, she's a super sexual person. Immediately, that's not her typecast, right? She was immediately talked into kind of doing these role plays with him. And so he had all these personalities. She decided to match his personalities to him, right? Libra rising, and just create all these little things. It's very Neptune in the fourth house. I think most of the time she excuses everything away because it's just all make-believe to her. She claims later on, oh, I wanted nothing to do with that. That was all him. Very Mars and Virgo, you know, very just Virgo energy in general, trying to remain very sweet. I think she still tries to remain very sweet, very innocent. I think she still definitely keeps up that character quite a bit and is very strategic in that. And things don't get any better. Things get worse between her and her mom. And that's when she just decides that, you know, we need to kind of come up with some sort of plan to figure out how we can elope together and live the life that we've wanted to. How will my Prince Charming save me? How will he go about this? Will I get pregnant? Like, she kind of thought about that at first, but Nicholas seemed to immediately attach to another idea. So let's get into the crime. Things got so bad, GYPSY was over it. She was uncovering more truth. She wanted to be with Nicholas. Nicholas wanted to be with her. They felt so swept up by love that they concocted a plan. And GYPSY basically said one day, do you really love me? How much do you really love me? Show how much you really love me. You know, all very Leo sun, Libra rising things, Aquarius moon even, how special am I, you know? And he was like, how do you want me to prove it to you? I'll prove it to you anyway. You know, Taurus, Scorpio, I'm so dedicated to you. I love you so much. And she asked him to murder her mother. And he said, of course I'll do it. Anything for us to be together. If this is the way for us to be together, then let's do it. So they're living in Springfield right now, and they arrange Nicholas to come and basically murder his mom, because originally I think GYPSY was trying to do it, but then she admitted that there's just no way that she'd be okay and be able to do it. You know, it's her to kill her own mother. So that's why she asked Nicholas to do it. And of course, he's a Scorpio moon, Venus in Gemini. He's gonna, you know, make these weird split-second decisions for love. You know, Mars in Cancer. He might even have some of his own issues with his mother. He also has Chiron in Cancer, so he might have some of his own wounds. I don't think he was living with his mom. I think he was living with his dad, so maybe he has some of his own problems with his mom. You know, he's a Scorpio moon. Of course he has some fucking problems with his mom. So maybe it was like a part of, you know, retaliation from that. GYPSY's like, I can't be in the room while it happens. You just need to stab her. And also it's very, very Libra rising of her to have somebody else do her dirty work of killing her mom, you know? Right as GYPSY's mom is about to go to bed, and when GYPSY's mom goes to bed for the night, that's when, you know, Nicholas is gonna come in and do the stabbing. GYPSY's mom says, don't hurt me, to GYPSY. At least that's what GYPSY claims. Her mom was the last thing her mom ever said to her was, don't hurt me. And I was just like, why are we skipping over this detail? Like, that's the most Pisces moon, like, scary, elusive, controlling thing to say after being like, oh, good night, and GYPSY, don't hurt me. Like, Did she know? Was she just a Pisces moon? And did she just intuitively know? Like, did she have access to her accounts and know about this murder and like allow it to happen anyways? And then a part of me was like, is she Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now? I don't know. Anyways, yeah, after Dee Dee went to sleep, GYPSY gave him the knife and he stabbed Dee Dee in the back 20 times or something like that. So I guess afterwards, you know, they stole a bunch of cash from Dee Dee. You know, she's Pluto in the second house. He's got a Scorpio moon, Taurus sun. And they fled the house. It's basically Rod's money that they stole, though. And they fled to a motel outside of Springfield, and it was the first time that she ever got to walk in public. Which, can you imagine that? Being 20-something, being able to walk, and it being the first time since you were like 5 to be able to walk around in public. That was something that I was like, that made me forgive her a lot. I know it sounds really dumb. It was the first time that she was able to be out and about without her mom. How Chiron and Leo in the 10th house with a Cancer midheaven, like that is the most ultimate control and wounding. Something that I didn't mention is that there was this idea of, is she like slow? Is she, you know, special ed? And she has Mercury in conjunct Saturn. And so I think this is like, no, she's not as slow as Dee Dee was saying, as everybody was saying. She's not, you know, she's older, she's more mature, she's wiser, she's smarter. She's not as dumb as everybody was saying and treating her as such. However, with that Mercury in conjunct Saturn, she still did wind up growing up sheltered and ignorant and slow in a different way, in a public way, in a way that she doesn't understand how the world is conducted and how she conducts herself in the world. And what I mean by that is she doesn't realize that things like computers can be tracked, right? They finished this murder and they got away. They think they got away with it because they weren't caught while they were doing it, right? You just see how little she knew. So they think they're gonna get away with their crime, right? She feels like she's finally living her fairy tale. And they're really stupid though. They don't know anything. They like mail the murder weapon like to Nicholas's mom's house, which is insane. They even make these Facebook posts because GYPSY and Dee Dee had a joint Facebook, which again is like crazy control, saying that bitch is dead and like all these other vulgar things. And so everybody was concerned, right? They even like stated, and GYPSY later said like, oh, I wanted people to find my mom. That's why. It's like, I wanted people to be suspicious and find her, and I didn't want her to rot away. Really back and forth, really confusing again. Basically, she was found out like really easily. They were discovered, and you know, friends were suspicious, blah, blah, blah. They wound up getting a search warrant. They find Dee Dee, all this stuff. And basically they wind up extraditing Nicholas and GYPSY back to Springfield. So at first, people are like so relieved that they found GYPSY, because for a while they only knew of Dee Dee's body, and so they assumed that GYPSY was also murdered, because you have to remember that all her neighbors, all the friends, all the community that they had made, because they had made quite a community, she's got this 11th house stuff, okay? They were really worried about her. When they went missing, there was this like vigil held for them, you know, such 11th house stuff, such Pisces moon stuff, Aquarius moon stuff, Leo sun stuff, like she was so important in the community, right? They thought it must have been some serial killer, you know what I mean, that did this. And then they slowly start uncovering more stuff. Now, if you watch the first interview that GYPSY has with the police, she says, no, sir, I did not do this. No, sir, I didn't know anything about it. So she's still feigning innocence. Now, when they talk to Nicholas, you have to remember Nicholas is autistic, and I think that this shows a lot in his interview with the police, because he just tells the truth. He tells the truth so blatantly. And maybe sometimes his truth isn't the real truth, but it's his truth through his eyes. You know, it might not be the truth, but it is his truth. And he's just very autistic in the way that he speaks about things, very to the point, very upfront about it, and he tells everything. And so they know that, you know, GYPSY was involved. They find these messages, all this stuff, but GYPSY is still feigning innocent, which is, to me, really sketchy to a personality. Again, I think it's this Virgo stuff, her just trying to stay good. She wants to always be good. She's the hero of the fairy tale. She's the Leo Aquarius. She is a superhero to her. You know, it's the good one, you know, right? And that's how she sees herself, and so that's how she's acting, and that's how she wants to be. The Taurus Scorpio is the villain, you know, and that's how he's pitted. That's how he's seen. Even the Taurus Pisces is the savior complex. She reminds me of like a Jimmy Savile as well. The only time that GYPSY shows any fear is when she's in the courtroom for the first time. She finds out that they have the text messages between her and Nicholas and that they can track all this stuff. And that's when you for the first time see fear in her eyes and realize that she's gonna be found out. And that's when everything really changes. The media soon reported that she was never sick. She could always walk. She was walking in Springfield, but her mother made her pretend otherwise. And all of her neighbors and her whole family, they felt absolutely betrayed and feel very hurt that they were lied to by GYPSY and that GYPSY kept it up and that GYPSY was a part of this manipulation too. She's coming across a little different now. She's not perfect little golden girl, Libra, Leo, Aquarius, Virgo, GYPSY, you know? She's coming across more as her Pluto squares. She's coming across more as maybe even her Capricorn energy, which can be seen as the devil. This was, oh my God, this is literally the devil card. It's like she was chained, but could you just get him off and walk away? But it's like, okay, well, is there a bigger cage inside the picture? Anyways, so did they find her guilty? Did the courts find her guilty? You know, she was up for first-degree murder, second-degree murder, or nothing at all. So the murder happened in 2015, and her trial happened also in 2015. And after everything kind of came out about all these horrible surgeries that GYPSY had to go through, how much she was lied to about her conditions, how little she knew, all the abuse, being handcuffed, you know, she was also physically abused on multiple occasions, all the obvious control and manipulation, a lot of sympathy went out to GYPSY, and a lot of people really understood in her situation. So she went from a victim of a serial killer to a murderer and a mastermind to a long-term victim of child abuse. I don't think there's any way that somebody could get out of that fourth house without some sort of abuse or some sort of thing going on there, you know? She was also, during this time, on insane amounts of medication, most of which she didn't even need. And one of them included things like mood stabilizers and mood adjusters, like things like Xanax. Remember, she's kind of barred out all the time, right? Her decision skills are highly impaired, and that makes a lot of sense with that Neptune conjunct Lilith in her fourth house, that she was kind of always out in a different world. That was also probably a way for her to escape too. She does have Neptune retrograde. I wonder what getting off of that addiction was like, and I wonder if she'll struggle with any addiction going forward. So after all this came out, the prosecutor chose not to seek the death penalty. Even though he could have, he chose not to because he just called the case so extraordinary and so unusual. He had a lot of sympathy for GYPSY, so he decided to take that out. After her attorney had obtained medical records from Louisiana, he secured a plea bargain of second-degree murder for GYPSY. She had to be in prison for 10 years and serve at least 85% of her sentence. And she accepted the plea deal, and she admitted to being guilty of the whole thing. She actually wound up gaining 14 pounds while she was kept in county jail because she was just so undernourished and so underfed. And she says on multiple occasions that the way she was treated in prison and in jail was better than the way that she was treated with her mother, and that she would rather have gone through living in prison for 10 years than living with her mother for another 10 years. Is she telling the truth? Probably. I believe her. I don't want her mom's chart. I don't want to deal with her mom's chart. I don't want to deal with her mom. Her mom sounds awful. However, she's always going to be dependent. She has this really harsh Neptune in the fourth house. She's, you know, really fucked up because of the situation, you know, even though she's getting out of prison now. You know, this all happened 8 years ago. She did serve 85% of her sentence, and she was let off on parole. She was a good girl, which she references a lot. I'm going to be a good girl. She says it to her mom. She says it to her dad. She just says it a lot, you know, very Virgo, Leo, Libra. They also show that she has a lot of sociopathic tendencies, which makes sense. It's in line with her mother. She has an Aquarius moon. She has some negative Uranus aspects. She has her Uranus in the fourth house and a wide conjunction to Lilith. Also conjunct her Neptune. Yeah, she has 7th house in Aries. She definitely deals with all this 11th house too, deals with some more levels of detachment. This Leo sun, you know, has some egotistical things. Even if she does have some struggles with her ego, it's still there. So yeah, it makes sense that she definitely has some sociopathic tendencies. Again, I don't know everything about it, but it's going to be hard for her to adjust. She definitely, I think more than anything, feels like she lives an unconventional life and feels very different and outcasted because of it. Literally outcasted. She was literally imprisoned because of what she chose to do because of it. And they always mention about how her case was so unprecedented and so unlike any other. So she just is more alienated. She didn't go to school. She doesn't know how to interact with people. She only knows things online, but yet she's so in the online sphere. She's famous and she has an unmistakable face, honestly. At least I think so. So in July of 2015 is when she accepted this plea bargain. I think that it was a big deal. So some people you know, are on two sides of the fence. Some people think that she's a master manipulator, that she's a part of this, should have gotten more time, maybe even the death penalty. Most people, I think, fall more on the edge of she shouldn't have gotten any time. You know, 8 to 10 years was horrible. You know, she dealt with being with her mom for 20-something years. That's prison enough. I think I'm lying somewhere in between. I never agree with the justice system, but I think this is one of the only times I agree with the justice system. I think she did need to have some rehabilitation. She also only knows how to be dependent on other people, so she kind of does need to be dependent on some sort of industry, some sort of, what's it called? You know, some sort of system. You know, I love how she is definitely part of the system there. She relies on it. But more than that, you know, as I mentioned earlier on, her mother did kill her mother, and who knows what happened with her mother's mother, and so on and so forth. I assume that with all this Pluto stuff, there's a really, really long lineage of mothers abusing the daughter and never getting in trouble for it. And I think that GYPSY was, in her own way, the martyr. The Neptune conjunct Lilith, she was exiled for it. She was the martyr in the situation of her family, of her, like, feminine bloodline, I think. And so I think her admitting that she murdered her mom was a big clearing of karma. And I think that her going through those 8 years, whether she was a manipulator and part of it, or whether she was an abuse victim, or, you know, the reality of the fact that she's a full moon baby, that she's probably had a little bit of her hand in both. I think that that was kind of more to clear her family's karma those 8 years and to be able to, like, start fresh and start new. I do know that she got married in jail to somebody else. She did not continue the relationship with Nicholas Godejohn, but she will forever be connected to him because of the murder, because of this trial. And yeah, so we'll see what happens when she gets out. I do want to take a look at her progress chart after this, but before I do that, let's talk about Nicholas Godejohn for a second and what happened with him, because what happened with him is very different to what happened with her. Godejohn definitely faced a lot more of a severe pushback because he was the one that actually killed her, and he was not related to the abuse as much, you know, at all. So he was given less sympathy, and he definitely got a lot less sympathy in his charges. His trial wasn't set until November 2018. Now, his lawyers contended that he had a IQ of 82. He was on the autism spectrum and all this other stuff, so he had diminished capacity for understanding what he was doing. But because prosecutors showed text messages and all these other things between GYPSY and Godejohn that said this murder was 100% planned, you know, it was a first-degree murder charge, he got a lot of a harsher sentence. After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury decided that he was guilty, and in February 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison for the murder conviction. But not only that, he also got an armed criminal action charge. He was sentenced to another 25 years concurrent with his already life sentence. So that's like 50, 60 years. That's his entire life that he got because of this. And he asked the judge and the prosecutor to be easy on him because he had fallen blindly in love with GYPSY, and he did this for love, and he did this to save her, but they didn't care. They gave him the absolute harshest sentence they could without giving him the death penalty. So after all that said and done, it's interesting just that he has a Scorpio moon. He was definitely demonized. Definitely got a lot harsher punishment, which makes sense. His chart is so much harsher. His Saturn is so much harsher than GYPSY's is. So his punishment is aligned with that as well. So now let's talk about after the crime, right? What's going on right now after everything subsided? Maybe thinking, what is Dee Dee's family? What does all of Dee Dee's siblings think? What of her nephews and nieces think? They say good. They say we fucking hated that bitch. We're glad she's dead. She got what was coming to her. None of them wanted her ashes. They flushed him down the toilet. But I mean, it makes sense. She was an evil person. Her Saturn is conjunct her Lilith, so things did come around to her eventually. It just took a really, really long time. And she got away with it for pretty much her entire life. She lived in a lot of luxuries that she didn't deserve. So GYPSY, as I mentioned, served her time in Missouri's Chillicothe Correctional Center. She researched Munchausen by proxy. She said her mom had it. GYPSY says that she accepts that she committed a crime and she has to live with the consequences. She definitely exhibits lingering trust issues due to her Munchausen by proxy, which makes sense, and that she's really psychologically compromised and that she might deal with things like PTSD. And on June 27th, 2022 is when she married Ryan Scott Anderson, and on December 28th is when she's going to be released from parole. So let's look at her progressed chart before we end this video. Let's look at it exactly for December 28th, 2023. For about 3 years, she's had a Scorpio rising. She's had Pluto in her first house for quite some time, which makes sense. She's been in prison. She's been under a lot of control. She's a changed person psychologically now. But she has a bunch of stuff. She's a major stellium in Leo, in her 5th house, a lot of retrograde energy, all square Pluto, which makes sense. She doesn't have a mother. She doesn't have basically a home anymore. And she has this midheaven in Leo, but it's opposite Saturn. So she's getting a lot of media attention. Her Chiron is conjunct her midheaven, but it's not for something that you really want to be known for. Not that she's in the absolute worst light. People have a lot of sympathy, a lot of love for her. She's able to probably do a lot and heal a lot of people in the future with her story. So it's, you know, positive planets like Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury, and the Sun. They're not all healthy. Again, 2 of them are square Pluto. She has a healthy Mars in Virgo in the 11th house, a healthy Sun in Virgo in the 10th house. So she's actually probably doing not too bad. Her moon is in Aries in the 6th house, and it's trying a bunch of stuff in Leo. So she's probably really happy to finally feel free. It's square Neptune, so she's a little scared that she doesn't know how to be, you know, independent. She's still used to being dependent on people. But she's probably been able to create some sort of routine, some sort of more of a life for herself. I don't know. I think she's focused a lot on her public appearance. I'm wondering if she's going to go on a media tour or something along those lines, or how much she's really going to be seen. All of her 4th house stuff has moved into her 3rd house, so that makes sense because her community right now is prison. And she'll probably have a lot of continuing problems with her community going forward, but she doesn't have the worst chart going on, and she's never had the absolute worst chart. She's had a unhealthy 4th house. She seems very smart, very capable. As long as she's able to find a home and be able to deal with being on parole, that's the main issues. And she doesn't have some sort of psychological dependency on drugs. She definitely now has some psychological issues that she did not have before in her natal chart, I think is like the main biggest thing with that 3rd house. She probably feels like this is the first time she's able to be independent. She's able to be reborn with that Aries moon. And she's just very aware, I feel like, of how the public sees her. And her case is just so public. Everything just feels so public for her. And so it makes sense that her 4th house has progressed into Aquarius, and all of her 4th house planets have moved into her 3rd house, because it's kind of like her mom just lives in her mind now. It's just a psychological fear. It has nothing to do with the reality. And she probably feels very detached to her family and to herself and to everyone and to people, you know, major Aquarius stuff. What do you guys think? Is she a manipulator? How much did she lie? You've seen her chart. You have your own opinions. Please let me know. I definitely missed some things out. So anything that you see in her, what do you think of her? What do you think is her reality? I'm really curious to see what she makes of herself. I definitely think she'll be in the public eye for quite some time. If she doesn't run from it, we'll still talk about her. I'm talking about her. I'm making a video about her. I'm adding to it, right? I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I sell birth chart readings on shainaemily.com. I have an astrology TikTok, and I have a personal Instagram. And if I upload this at the end of the year, I would just like to say Happy New Year. I've got some exciting new videos planned for the new year. Thank you so much for watching, and bye.